All right. So, uh, ideally, I would do this in class with you, but as you guys know, that's just not going to be possible this semester. Uh, we've been focusing mostly on capturing and getting to know our cameras and composition so far this semester. And unfortunately, now that we've gotten to the part of the semester where we have uh, some heavier software goals, we're not able to meet face to face. But I think that we should be able to get through this with some videos here. So this week we're looking at compositing for the first time. So compositing essentially meaning we're going to take multiple photographs and make them into one photograph. And the exercise that I have for you is this one here. This is that lesson 3 group of files. You should have 3 files once you download that. This is the start file that has, all the different images. There's 7 images here to work with. And then there's an end file, and this is what you should end up with. And then the third file is actually a PDF that you can use to follow and go through this assignment if you choose. But if you want to just go through based on, what you've learned from the other videos or what you get in this video, that's fine. You may still need to do some of the stuff from the PDF just to pick up some of the commands like, inverting color and whatnot. But again, we're going to take all of these pieces and turn them into one image. And that's the idea of compositing. And then I also have some information on double exposures that I'm going to have you guys look at. And then you'll have a kind of a fun assignment to create a double exposure. And I need to write that down because I don't know if I actually put that assignment up yet. So I think I have, but I'm just going to make a note here. Okay, so this, layers and selections are really the big cornerstones of Photoshop and what make Photoshop powerful and give us the ability to do a lot of things. At first, it can feel like a heavy lift, but it just takes time and a little bit of practice before you'll understand the tools and be able to work with them effectively. Now, there's a lot of different selection tools, and each of the selection tools does things a little bit differently and gives us different capabilities. I'm going to try to take these piece by piece, do this a little bit more simply, and then get into some more complex tools. And remember, this just takes practice. So the first set of tools, there's essentially like 3 ways that we can select things in Photoshop. The first set of tools that we can use to select things, I actually call them tool-based. And I call them tool-based because it's basically our interaction with the software. So the rectangular marquee and the elliptical marquee tool are examples of tool-based selections. I click, I hold, I drag, and I get a selection based on my interaction with the interface. So you can see it right there, okay? So that's the first type of selection. Then we have color-based selections. So making selections based on like a color or a color range. We have a lot of those tools as well. We have the quick selection tool, the magic wand tool, the object selection tool, which we won't get into so much. That won't help us in this particular project, but it is a new helpful tool. I'm going to use the quick select tool. So the quick select tool, actually I'm going to use the magic wand tool because I think the quick select tool is actually an example of the third type of selection. But let's use this the magic wand tool here. And essentially, I'm going to click, and it's going to make a color range selection based on the pixel that I clicked on and then surrounding pixels. And I can change things like the tolerance, whether or not it's contiguous. I am going to stay with contiguous. Contiguous means that it's just basically neighboring pixels. Sample layers, there's lots of options here. But I can just hold the Shift key, and that's actually another thing with making selections. I'm going to change the tolerance, make it a little bit more aggressive. The higher that number is, the more it'll select. And so I'm just holding the Shift key and making that selection based on color. So that's a pretty simple technique. Now, and that's actually, let me take a step back now. I'm going to talk about Shift and Alt, adding and subtracting from selections. So I just pressed Command D to deselect there. I am going to come back and select that again. So adding and subtracting from selections, pretty easy. So if I make a selection and I get the marching ants that indicates that I have a selection, and then I make another selection, the first selection goes away. But if I hold the shift key, if you watch my cursor, it now turns into a little plus sign with it here. So now I'm adding to the selection. Okay, and if I hold Alt, the selection gets a little negative icon, and I can now subtract from the selection. So we can manipulate our selections really easily. That we have lots and lots of flexibility, the ability to essentially create whatever selection we'd like to make. So that's the first two types of selection tools, and a little bit about how we manipulate them. Now the third type of selection tool is what I'm just basically a hybrid tool. A hybrid tool meaning it's going to use our interaction with the software and color-based ranges. And the quick selection tool is actually one of those tools. So it's a brush tool. I click. It's kind of like a faster, more aggressive magic wand tool. I'm going to click in a particular area, and then it's going to make a selection based on the brush size that I have and the point that I've selected, but then also surrounding pixels. And I'm just basically clicking, but I can click and drag like I'm painting. Now, the quick select tool can be too aggressive. You see here it actually gave me this interior section, what's called the counter of this 5. But I can hold it's automatically going to add. See how it's a little plus in the middle? But if I hold Alt, I can now subtract, and then I can even decrease the size of the brush. I'm just using bracket keys. You can also go up here, change the size of the brush, and make it really tiny, which makes it less aggressive, and clean that selection up. And then also, if I see that I want to refine it. So really easy tool to use. Takes a little bit of practice at first because it does work so fast. You can actually end up selecting more than you intend to really quickly and really easily. Okay, so those are the basic kind of techniques. Now there's tons of selection tools. You know, that we have. I've started with the marquee selection tools. You know, here I showed you the magic wand and the quick select. I'm going to get into the Polygonal, the Lasso Tools, the Polygonal and magnetic Lasso Tools, and then even though there's select menu, we also have based on color range. But what I want to do here is I'm going to kind of quickly run through basically how you do this assignment and some of the commands that you'll have to use to get through the assignment, to get you through some of the pitfalls, because of course it's not only your first project where you're using a lot of selections in Photoshop. We've not used Photoshop very much. We've mostly been using Lightroom at this point, but also we're getting introduced to layers just by default. It's just going to happen, even all right, so the first thing we're going to do is we start with getting this label, and we're going to put it onto the book. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to zoom in on this little guy here, and I'm going to show you a couple things, just how this works, and then also how to manipulate it easily. So you basically want to try to draw it as close to the ellipse there as you can. Unfortunately, it's actually kind of tricky to draw it, but perfectly. But we have something to help with that. Like, you don't have to sit here and like, oh nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. And do that all day long, you're never going to get anywhere. There's a tool actually under the selection menu where we can transform the selection. So I'm going to use that, and I got to hold shift if I don't want it to constrain proportions. And I'm just going to make it line up with the edges of that book label. And looks like I got a little match there. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I hit enter. That transforms the selection. And that makes this a whole lot easier. Because, I mean, I could have sat here all day and tried to draw a perfect, oval and yeah, I would have never gotten there. So again, this kind of falls under work smart, not hard. Learn the tools, know which tools are going to help you the most, and then go from there. Now, once I have a selection, there's a lot I can do with the selection. So let's stop and talk about what we can do with selections before I actually do what you're supposed to do with this assignment. We can move selections, we can copy selections, we can clear selections, selections isolate things. Let's look at what that means. Now, moving. This is actually a bad thing. I don't want you to do this, okay? Because this is actually, we have what's called destructive editing and non-destructive editing. And using the move command, I'm actually editing destructively. That's bad. We don't want to do that. So what I mean by that is if I put my cursor here, I have the move tool selected. If I put my cursor here and I click and drag this over to the book, boom, it looks like I want it to look like. Beautiful. But the problem is I've now covered up the pixels on this book permanently. I can't go back. I have permanently changed the image. That's bad. We always want to edit non-destructively to give ourselves flexibility. You see here it's just one layer. So, I mean, I have no options. If I save and come back and think, oh crap, I made a mistake, I want to move that more, I can't move it more. In fact, why don't I go ahead and do this and show you what happens? Okay, so I'm going to deselect. There it is, it's done. And they're like, oh no, I want to move it now. So now I'm going to make that selection again. And I'm using Alt to select from the middle. And I'm not going to worry about making it clean. Grab the move tool and then, oh, but wait. Oh no, what just happened? That's terrible, okay? So we want to be careful about how we edit. So you don't want to, you can move things around, all pixels around on one layer, but it's not necessarily the most effective way to do it. So I just I did undo to get back to where I was. We can also copy and paste. This is how we do want to do things. Okay, so if I copy and paste, and I'm going to use Command C to copy, and Command V, I'm on a Mac, sorry, Control Command, doesn't matter. And now you can see here in my layers panel, it has created a new layer. This is non-destructive editing. Now, I can move this over here. I still have the original information. If I'm like, oh, no, I want this more to the right, I can move it. It doesn't hurt anything. Oh, no, more, no, back. I can make decisions. It's like, you know, it's like, let's move the couch over here. No, let's move the couch over here. We can do this all day long, and it's just fine. I'm pretty happy with it right there. No problem. But I'm going to go back again. Other things we can do. It isolates those pixels. So basically anything I do to the image is going to be applied only to the area that the selection has been applied to. So let's say I want to make a color selection to this. I don't want that label to be black with a gold ribbon. I don't know why I do this. I'm going to invert the color. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. That's what I want the book label to look like. Okay, sure, why not? All right, so you can see here, even though I inverted the color, it only inverted the color just in that one area where I have the selection. So you've protected the rest of the image. Now I can Control C, Control V, and there's my book label. It can look a little bit different. Okay, we'll go with that. Why not? My book label can be white and blue instead of black and gold. All right, so that's, some basics of selections. All right, so again, tool-based selection, really easy to do. And then the rest of it is just, we're just going to slowly go through. I'm going to show you some different tools that we can use to do this. And we just basically want to get to this is what our final product is going to look like. So let me run through making those selections and doing that. And I'll use some different selection tools. For the 5, I'm again going to use that quick select tool. And I want to, actually, you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna purposely do something improperly here so that it throws an error. I gave you another video, but it just in case you don't get to that video or you get to this video first, I'm going to show you this. So I'm going to do a really simple thing. Selection tools are sometimes about trying to determine which tool is the best tool, and sometimes it's a combination of tools, sometimes it's about thinking creatively. Like, okay, this flower. There's all kinds of ways that we could select this flower. I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to select this flower. We're going to use 2 tools, a conjunction of tools, to get this. But I'm going to do it improperly first so you can see where some pitfalls are. So what I would do with this is I would actually make a rectangular marquee around the whole flower and then use the magic wand and subtract the white from the selection. Leverage what we have, the best tools we have available to us. But let's see what happens here when I try to do this. Okay, I'm going to put the rectangular marquee over. Now I'm going to go to the magic wand tool, hold Alt, and then it says no warning, no pixels were selected. Why the hell weren't pixels selected? Of course I selected pixels. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. This is where you need to verify the layer that you're on. So if you look over here in the layers panel, you can see I'm in layer 1, not the background layer. Those flower pixels are on the background layer, not layer 1. So that's why the computer's throwing an error. It's telling me, I don't know what you think you're doing, but it ain't gonna work because there ain't no pixels here. So just click OK, let it do its thing, select the background layer. We're gonna do the same process again. Rectangular marquee, magic wand, hold the Alt key to make it subtract, and bang! That's the easiest way to make that selection. So learning the selection tools is important because then you can leverage the different technologies, okay? You want to work again smart, not hard. It's okay to work hard, just got to work smart first. So now I'm going to, and actually I'm going to purposely do this. So if I go to layer 1, press Control C, nothing is copied because there's nothing there. Got to go to the background layer, Control C, Control V, and now I have the flower on its own layer, and I can move it anywhere I'd like. And I want it over the side of the book label, just kind of so. You know what? I'm going to be silly. I'm going to hit Control T, transform it, and I'm going to make it gonna go this way. And it's on its own layer, so it's isolated. So I'm going to press Control U to get the hue and saturation. And I'm going to change the color of it because I want my flower to be different color. I don't know. Oh, that's hideous. Maybe I don't want it to be a different color. Okay, no. Oh, I like that. I'm staying with that. Boom. All right. This is the great thing about selections and using layers. I can really quickly and easily edit the photographs and isolate pixels. This really is the power of Photoshop. And this is where heavier editing is going to take place. That's why we start with Lightroom. Lightroom is for lighter editing, fast editing, batch processing. But once we're going to make some heavy edits to a photograph, Photoshop is our tool. Okay? All right, so let's do the 5 now, and I'm going to use the quick select tool. So I'm going to click and verify I'm on the background layer. I'm going to grab my quick select tool, and I'm going to increase the size of that brush a little bit, and click and drag around. It did the same thing. I'm going to sort of get away from that, make the brush a little smaller again. Again, I'm using the bracket keys on the keyboard to do that. I'm holding the Alt key to subtract from selections. And I now have that 5 selected. Control C, Control V. I now have a copy of the 5 on its own layer. Nothing to it. You can see here, it's just about learning the tools. It's not horribly complicated. It just takes time. And let's see, that's where we had that. But yeah, I'm going to Control T to transform again, because I don't want mine to look just like the one that's, you know what? That 5 is going on top of the book label. Ooh, didn't need to do that. So I'm going to make it small enough that the book label kind of covers it. And then I'm going to move that. This is another thing about layers too, I hadn't talked about yet. So I moved that behind the book label. I can now change the appearance of the image by coming over here into the layers panel and moving layer 5 above all the other layers, and now there we go. And I'll transform that a little bit more because it's still too big. I want it to fall within. So you don't have to make it look like the one that's in there. You can if you want, but if you want to get creative and do your own thing, that's cool too. I'd love to see you guys do that. So, all right, so again, really simple. That's that hybrid. I'm using the brush and I'm using color-based selection to make that. All right, let's do the lasso tools. The lasso tools are pretty, they're different, but they're great tools. A lot of people overlook these tools. They don't want to use these tools because they're probably, of all of the different selection tools, one of the most complicated to get used to. I love them. They make incredibly clean selections. Some of them a little bit more than others. The magnetic lasso tool is not so easy. So let's look at the lasso tools and see what we can do here. The lasso tool, this is why people stop with the lasso tool, okay? You click, you drag, it draws, and wherever you make the line, it makes a selection. This can be useful, but it's hard to control because of that interface, all right? Now, I actually find the Polygonal Lasso tool much more useful. The Polygonal Lasso tool, it does exactly what it sounds like it does. It makes a polygon. Instead of clicking and holding and dragging to draw, I click once, I click again, and it draws a segment in between. Now, there's also some other interesting things that can happen here. I'm holding the Alt key, and when I hold the Alt key, the Polygonal Lasso tool goes to the Lasso tool. And then I let go of the Alt key, it's back to the Polygonal Lasso tool. These are cool little tricks that you can use to make selections in very custom ways. And I'm going to select the pen using this tool. So I'm going to zoom in quite a bit here, and I'm going to show you how it's really easy to use the Polygonal Lasso tool and then also to switch over to the lasso to make it to do some more complex parts. So I'm just going to start on the nib. It's pretty easily geometric, and I'm just moving my mouse around, clicking and leaving points. And I can hit the backspace if I want to remove the last point, or delete key if you're on a Mac like I am. And look at how clean that makes this. This is going to make such a ridiculously clean selection. Makes it so easy to get objects like this and composite with them. And it's not taking that much time. You'd think, and gosh, I'll tell you, some of the work that I do, I will spend 15 minutes to a dang hour cutting out something. And that's where this comes in handy. Okay, now I'm going to switch to that functionality where I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to hold the Alt key and click, and it's going to switch to the Lasso tool, and then I'm going to get that rounded part as best I can. See how it's switched? And now I'm just clicking and dragging. And now I'm going to let go, and it's back to the Polygonal Lasso tool. I didn't do a great job, but we're zoomed in pretty tight. It's not going to make much of a difference. And I can always clean these up. We always go back and fix our selections. Remember, we can add and subtract with Shift and Alt, or Shift and Option if you're on a Mac. Let me go a little bit closer here. I'm gonna get tight. And you want to work in tight like this when you're making this kind of selection. Okay. And bang, there we go. Confirm I'm on the right layer, because obviously I'm not on the background layer, and I don't want to screw up this selection. So the background layer, Control C, Control V, and there's my pen. And Control T, and now I can rotate the pen and put the pen right there where I'd like it. All right. Okay, so the next is the lock, and I'm also going to use another lasso tool for this one, all right? So I'm going to use the magnetic lasso tool on this one. The magnetic lasso tool is another one of those hybrid tools, whereas the lasso tool and the polygonal lasso tool, those are tool-based. It's not using any assistance, color correction assistance. The magnetic lasso tool is going to use color-based assistance. It's going to search for contrast. So, and you can see up here, like width, that's how far away from where I'm going to draw. It's going to look for that contrast, and then contrast 10%. That's how much contrast it's looking for before it's going to drop a point. You'll see what the points look like. Frequency, how often it's going to drop points. All right, so I'm going to click, and then I just start dragging, and you see how it's snapping. It's trying to find the edge for me, and it does a pretty good job. Now, if it struggles, like it is here, I click, it drops a point. So I have some flexibility. Whoop! Okay, I screwed up, I went back, hit the backspace key, and that helps me out. So yeah, don't feel like you don't have options. If it moves just like it did on me right there, just hit that backspace key. And I'm clicking to help this because on some of these where I want these cleaner edges here, help it out. But I'm not clicking now, I'm just letting it find the edge on its own. Oh, I'm going to go back. Click, 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 and there we go. And now that's selection. Not perfect, but it's pretty slick. And again, go back to the background layer to confirm I'm on the right layer. Command C, Command V. Now that lock is, whoops, I inverted my pen. Let's go back and hit Control I and invert it again here. I don't know why I did that. And now grab my move tool, and I can move this lock, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to actually move layer 5 to the top so that it's above everything, and transform it just for fun. Rotate it a little bit, maybe drop it right there. All right, kind of making our own thing. It doesn't look exactly like this one, as obviously as we can see here. I don't know why I have a lock on top of my book. It's a really important book with secrets in it, so I have to lock it. I have no idea. All right, and then the last thing, and this one's a pretty easy one. This is you're taking the globe, and you're going to make a selection, and then it has you invert the color and make 3 of them and transform. So there's a lot of things it's trying to teach you in this exercise. So I'm back on the background layer again. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift, because Shift is, oop. Yeah, I know it's, I don't know what I just did there, but operator error. Let's try this again. Alt and Shift, get it as close as I can. And I can just move this, I can nudge the selection around. That's actually pretty close, I'll take it. Again, if you're making the selection, holding Shift constrains the selection so it's a perfect circle, and then holding Alt, so let me actually take a step back here. So this is what happens if I just use the elliptical tool. It's from the original point, okay? If I hold Shift, it's now going to give me a perfect circle no matter what. And if I hold Alt, instead of going from the corner, it goes from the middle. So those are other little tricks that help us out with making selections. So I'll do this again here. Get as close as I can. And I'm just going to nudge that over with the arrow keys. Close enough. Control C, Control V. Control 0, or Command or Control 0 to zoom out. Bring this up to the top. And now I'm going to invert it. That's Command I. Inverts the color. Now I'm going to duplicate that layer. And duplicating a layer, you can just grab layer 6, grab it down, drag it to this new layer icon. New layer. Control T. Make a bigger one. Enter. Copy it again by dragging it down. Do a new layer. Control T. And make a bigger one still. Oop, you know what? I'm not constraining that properly. Because this is a weird thing with Photoshop. They changed some functionality. So if I want to make a constrained, a perfect circle or a perfect square when I'm making a selection, I hold the Shift key. If I want to constrain proportions while I'm manipulating pixels, I don't hold anything. It used to be that you held Shift to constrain. They changed that, and it's taken a while to get used to. But I'm now. Yeah, I still screw up, as you can see. I think that second globe I made an oval because I held Shift. Yeah, so just be aware of that. All right, so here I have, basically a finished product. And then when you turn it in, I actually want you to crop it and go ahead, and then you'll flatten it as well. You don't have to turn in the PSD. So I'm going to grab the crop tool. I'm going to click and drag to get my edges. Oops, I didn't want to do that. There we go. Don't make it too tight, but we don't need the whole board. And then I'm going to flatten it. Now, this is destructive. If I was working on a project like you guys are going to be doing in a couple weeks here, like the retouch and the restorations, keep your layers. But for the purposes of this assignment and making things simpler for yourselves, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and flatten it. The reason why is if you look down here at the memory, the document is 1.93 or 22.6 megabytes. Now, later in the semester, totally fine if you start turning in huge files, but there's no reason for you to do it on this assignment. I do want to see your work on other assignments. On this assignment, go ahead and flatten. So I'm going to go to Layer. I'm going to flatten. And then I would save it as something else. I'm not going to save anything right now. because I just don't need to. I don't want to screw up my start file. So, but that's, what your project could look like. Your project could look like this. Your project can look like whatever you want. I just am trying to give you guys practice with selecting and using layers and making composite images. All right. So really, this should be a pretty fun assignment. Give you guys some things to learn, but also give you some opportunities to be creative and really see how powerful Photoshop can be. All right, well, if you guys have any trouble, let me know. There are more videos on making selections and using layers that give a little bit more detail and go into more detail on selections and how to use layers. So please do go ahead and look at those. This video is just meant to be specific to helping you guys get started with this assignment. All right, guys, have a great week.